I'm just going to talk about Firefox OS today. I got a lot to cover. I'm speaking in English. I do speak fast. I do speak German as well. So if you want to ask me later on, we can do that in German as well. I also move over to the T-Mobile booth, I think, or Telecom booth as it's called, before I fly back home tonight. So if I'm too fast, just start waving and throw things at me or something like that. But I want to do a recording as well for people to get that in their homes if they cannot be at the great CEBIT as nobody else can. So I want to talk about making HTML5 work with Firefox OS because that is one of its main goals. Also, as we just said, I was at the Mobile World Congress 2013. This was our booth, so we had this massive fox over everything, which was actually quite interesting because we used to have that dinosaur in Mozilla, and it would have been cool to have this massive dinosaur because the Japanese booth was next to us, so probably wouldn't have gone down too well, but the Firefox was really, really good. Well, this is actually a lie, that photo, because all the time it looked like this. There was not a single day where we weren't completely rammed, where people came in and took pictures of the phones and got really excited about it. And the reason was that we actually had Firefox OS finally out. 2 years ago, Firefox OS was an empty repository, was an empty folder. Then we wrote the operating system. We wrote a year ago at Mobile World Congress, we showed a device that actually ran it. And this year we announced that we have 4 hardware providers and 18 mobile providers that want to bring out the phone with us. So it's safe to say that it was the star of the Mobile World Congress show, which is amazing because it's a very, very corporate show. And it's an open source, free system that actually can be used by anybody out there. So I had to give 57 different interviews with different news people, like from CNN to Deutsche Telekom internal to everybody. And a few of them completely caught me off guard. There was a guy from an economist paper. I'm 100% sure he doesn't know what the internet is. That man had no clue what I actually tried to explain to him about open source, about browsing, about HTML5, and I was like, I gotta find something. I gotta get a headline somehow. So in my desperation, I came up with saying like that the Firefox OS phone is the Volkswagen Beetle of smartphones. He understood that, and then I had to back it up somehow because I'm like, yeah, it sounds clever, but what do I mean by that, really? And there are actually a lot of parallels. The first thing, it's affordable by everyone. We're not actually battling the iPhones and the Nexus 4s with that. We want to make the phone as affordable as possible, and we want to make it easy for people to get into the app world. So the apps actually on Firefox OS are not only with credit cards, but you can also get them with carrier billing. So they come on your telephone bill, or you can actually buy just a card with 50 euro on it, give the phone to your kid and say like, here's 50 euro of games, and you don't get a surprise at the end of the month that 6,000 euro came from somewhere that you didn't know, and Apple tells you like, well, you bought it, you gotta pay it. So it's built on sturdy technology, which is a bit bizarre when you come from a mobile world and I talk to you that HTML is a sturdy technology, but it is, because it's been around for 12 years, and I've been building websites since 1997, back in the telecom browser and these kind of things. So we have a lot of experience and a lot of developers out there building HTML, and that's why it is a sturdy technology. It has been tested quite a lot. I'm coming back to this point in a second. There's lots of interchangeable parts. The operating system is open source. The interface of the operating system is written in HTML5, and the core that actually talks that talks to the hardware is actually a Linux core that is the same that is under Android. So it's the GONG core with a few drivers on top, and then the rest is HTML and Firefox. It's built on a trusted engine that doesn't boil over. So in the Volkswagen Beetle case, that was air-cooled. In our case, it's Gecko, which is the browser engine of Firefox, which is available on every platform out there and has been tested on all the different platforms as well. And it's making mobility and independence affordable. As I said, these phones are actually targeting the market where people don't get the newest, coolest iPhones and Androids, but actually can only afford a phone that goes around $100. So that's what we want to do with that. As Firefox, as Mozilla is a non-for-profit organization, we did not want to make money with that. We want to bring the web to people that don't have the web at the moment. And what we really want to replace is feature phones. We don't want to replace iPhones and Androids, we want to replace these old Nokias, these old Ericssons, this old Motorola, which is hard because all of them are so sturdy they don't die. But it's just not fun that you cannot be on the internet in a phone in a country like Brazil without having to spend 4 months' wage on your phone. So the system itself is HTML5 through and through. The interface is on GitHub, can be built by yourself on your desktop, you can play with it. And that's the same that back then the Volkswagen Beetle was announced with as well. Like all the spare parts are compatible to the model that was the year before. So you can build a Beetle from 10 other Beetles, and the same way you can build HTML from old HTML to new HTML rather easily. Whereas with native apps, you have to write them for every platform anew every time there's a new version out. And of course, everybody comes up to me and says like, but HTML5 can't do this, can't do that, can't do that. It's true that a few things are not possible in HTML5 that are in native platforms. But the biggest problem that I see with that is that we measure HTML5 at what the iPhone allows it to do. So a lot of the HTML5 features were broken in the first version of the iPhone. So a lot of news articles were written, a lot of articles were written, blog posts were written. This doesn't work, and it's still 4 years later. People still say it's broken. Not even testing on new platforms or on new browsers or on the new iOS if it's still broken. So a lot of stuff that we say that doesn't work in HTML5, if you test it out yourself, it really does. It doesn't on certain devices that don't give you access to the hardware. And that was our main problem. We want HTML5 apps to be as immersive, as interesting as native apps. We want to get to the camera. We want to get to the accelerometer. We want to make the thing vibrate. And we didn't get the right to do that on an iPhone or on an Android device. By now it's getting better as well, but still a lot of the hardware is not available to us. We have to convert HTML5 into a native language to actually get access. So these are all the things that are in a modern device. So all the things you have like battery, geolocation, SMS, telephony, and all of these things are now available as APIs, as web APIs. These are standards that we defined and actually give the W3C to standardize with other browser makers. Some of them are available in all browsers, battery API, geolocation for example. And all of these are actually in Firefox OS. So if Chrome wants to take some of those, if Opera wants to take some of those, if BlackBerry wants to put them in, be our guest. This is what we want to do. We want to open the hardware to technology without sacrificing the security of it. So by doing that, we have to come up with a packaged format of applications. We cannot just allow any HTML page on a server that we don't know, or any JavaScript that gets executed in a browser to access, for example, the telephone and make telephone calls on your behalf. Because otherwise we would have malware within a second, because 0900 numbers being called in the background, these kind of things. So we defined a manifest standard for web applications that say my HTML page here is actually an application. This is its name, this is what it wants to access. And when you actually go to one of those pages, it asks the user, do you want to allow to access the camera? Do you want to allow to actually send text messages, and so on and so forth. All of these settings can be changed dynamically as well. So I can later on say like, no, I don't want this app to get camera access anymore. There's a big problem in native platforms that I cannot change these settings without doing a full new reinstall. So that's why every puzzle game asks you for access to your address book and your camera and everything, because the new version they might need it, but they just want to ask for it up front. So we have a marketplace, much like anybody else has as well. So you can go to the marketplace, you can find reviews, you can review apps, you can download them there, you can install them. There's a listing of all the apps that you have, but that wasn't enough for us. First of all the apps that you have are tied to your personal account. So if you want to install it on 10 different devices, that's totally fine. If your device gets stolen, all your information about your apps gets retained with you, not with the hardware. So there's no DRM in these things that only allow it on 1 or 2 devices. It's an account that you bought for it. So you can take your app and take your app profile with you around the web, around desktop, about mobile, everywhere as well. And as these apps are HTML5, you can find app by content. So instead of having to go to the market, know the name of the app that you want, all you have to do is enter, for example, New York Yankees, that's an American screenshot here, and it will find you applications that have to do with this baseball team. So you find the content, the app content to consume by your interests, rather than having to know the apps yourself. Which also means that your app, like SoundCloud or Grooveshark, will show up for every band that people look for, instead of having to compete with 10,000 other sound apps on the market. So we made the app discovery and the app installation and trying out as easy as surfing the web, which I think is a very, very big step because marketplaces just don't scale. They will fall in on themselves, in a year's time. There's just too much information in there, and from a UX point of view, it's really hard to get people to find the right things. So the manifest file is just a JSON file. It defines the name of my app, a description, the launch path, the icons, and your developer. And in the second part, it tells you like what you want to access, which servers it can be installed from, and so on and so forth. There's 3 levels of access. You got hosted apps. These run on your server, which means it's easy to maintain for you and change images on the fly and these kind of things. There's privileged apps which run in the market. These are ones that actually we control because we want to make sure that you cannot call servers in the background that we don't know about. So you get more access with privileged apps. And there's certified apps which are actually just part of the operating system. So these are the ones that go directly to the metal and can do everything on the phone. So we cannot allow everybody to do that, again, because of security issues. So the hosted applications that we have are all these things that you find here. These are all available on the desktop. These are all available on the Firefox OS. So you got the vibration API, which we called Web Vibrator API, and there was too many stupid jokes, so we had to rename it. Geolocation, finding where you are. You can install apps from the web. The battery status, push notifications, web payment, and the payments are actually in-app payment and also payment for the app itself. And you got things like mouse lock API. If you do a 3D game, for example, you don't want to have a mouse pointer at all. And you have got things like IndexedDB to give you 50 meg of data storage for every app. So the whole story of HTML5 can't be offline is not true any longer. Proximity sensor is interesting. You can actually see how far away from each other 2 Firefox OS phones are. So that's cool for little gaming ideas. And ambient light sensor to change the light. So this is how easy they are. They're all simple JavaScript APIs. So if you want to have an app on Firefox OS and you don't want to go through the market, you just want to put an install button on your app, that's the code that you have to enter there. You just point it to the manifest URL and you got a callback handler on success and on error. That's as simple as it is to actually put your app into Firefox OS. The battery API is the same thing. You have like a navigator battery and you have a level change for different things. Battery API is a very interesting one. It sounds boring as hell, but you want your app to be used. So if you actually can find out that the battery is only 10% left, you might want to offer the user a simpler interface, no animations any longer. Or you might actually want to tell them to store your data before it gets lost, these kind of things. Privileged APIs, ones that we actually have, privileged apps, ones that we host on our service, also give it device storage, so I can actually read and write photos and videos and sounds from the device itself rather than storing it in my own database. I got a browser API, so I can build browsers in the system itself with JavaScript, which is a bit meta, but works out. TCP sockets for like chat clients, or if you want to do a VNC client or something like that on it. Contacts API to get the contacts, and System XHR, which is Ajax on the device level that allows you to go to third-party servers without having to go through JSONP. You can go through a CORS-enabled server to actually get the data from there. So a lot of people wrote in our workshops when we ran them, they wrote like RSS readers, and they always had to use System XHR for that because you cannot just read any RSS feed from the web because I don't know what's in there. I can't trust it. Contacts API, for example, I can say I want new contact. I init with the name Christian. I send a request to the Moz contact safe, and I got a callback handler on error on request, which is again easy to add. For example, to get your mobile network or your social network and get all the contacts into the Firefox OS phone with just a loop over that. Certified apps can do all things on the web. They can basically, on the phone, they can call telephone numbers. They can find out when the phone is idle and stop it from becoming idle. Web SMS, mobile connection, Bluetooth, everything you need in the stack itself. And also the camera API. I can reach the camera, I can record videos, I can take pictures, I can do all kind of things with that. Which again is a security problem, because if the user doesn't actually know that the camera might be open, might be embarrassing. There were a few cases where actually schools did that to their students. Not a good thing. In general, accessing these APIs on a hosted app will actually ask the user for permission to do that the first time, much like it is on the web with geolocation or with local storage at the moment. So Of course, everybody then asks me, like, if you really want to make HTML5 good, why do I have to certify my apps? Why do I have to package them up? Why can't I allow everything on hosted apps? And the reason is that the internet, in terms of security, is still broken. If your server gets taken over by somebody else, if your JSON file gets overwritten with maliciousware, I can actually get into my server. We have to have a review of your app, and we have to have a quality review of your app before we can bring it into the market. We didn't want to start a new market out there that actually has the same problems as the old ones, that basically is full of spam and full of like really bad apps from the very get-go. So we are a bit more stringent about it, but at the same time, we just want to make sure that our end users have a good experience and don't get a phone that actually gives them 12,000 barking dog apps instead of having something useful up front. So out of the box, Firefox OS partnered with the things that you would expect. We got Twitter, we got Facebook, we got Cut the Rope, we've got Electronic Arts for a few games. We have Pulse, we've got Timeout, all the things you would expect. Nokia Maps, that was quite a fun thing to make work because the hardware is 1 gigahertz processor and 256 meg of RAM. That's how far we go right now because that's affordable still for a price in the markets where we want to release that. Telefonica is releasing us with us in South America first, and Deutsche Telekom is reaching for the Polish market, and Telenor is want to do things in Hungary. So it's getting out there, but we want to make sure that it's a secure and good experience as well. We want to make HTML5 mature, not just like allow it to do everything else and then like 2 weeks later the first exploits will come out, which is not good. So if you don't have access to the hardware because you don't want to package your app up, you don't want to certify your app, you actually don't want to host it on our market, you have web activities. Web activities are the same as intents on Android. So instead of having access to the hardware myself, instead of having access to the address book myself, I just ask the user to do it on my behalf, and they can say yes or no. So instead of just taking a picture inside my app, I send the user to the camera app, they take a picture and it goes back to my device. That one is available for hosted applications, that one is available also in the browser itself. Chrome had web intents as well. They tried to do the same thing, but they just removed it again from Chrome. So web activities is the new standard proposal for that might get taken on by other people, by Microsoft and Opera as well. So hopefully, I like the idea of web activities. It's basically like right-clicking any file on your hard drive and saying open with. I don't want to know what you watch your videos with. I don't want to know where you store your photos. I just have a photo for you. I just want a photo from you, where it comes from. I don't care. As long as it's a photo in the end, my app can do cool stuff with it. I don't want to get your Flickr certification. I don't want to access your Twitter account. We should stop having to actually log in on the behalf of other users on the web, because that's where all these security problems with people losing their identity come from as well. Every few months there's like a new Twitter scare, like, oh, somebody sends mails on your behalf, tweets on your behalf. What happened? You had some stupid app that got hacked that actually on your behalf sends things out. So with web activities, I can go into configuration of the app, for example. I can do a dial to get a telephone number out. I can save a bookmark, I can view. So web activities really are activities of the user that you initiate with code and the user then actually puts out. So this is what it looks like on the device itself. If I ask for a pick control, it actually tells me, okay, I want to have a photo. Do you want to go from the wallpaper? Do you want to go from the gallery? Or do you want to go for the camera? I didn't need to know where these things are. I don't care what they are. There might be another app listed in a month's time. And this is partly why Chrome took that out of the desktop build, because this UI on the desktop just doesn't fly the same way. So it's a UX problem at the moment. But I like the idea of just being able to say, I want to have a picture and let the user decide to do. And if they hit the cancel button, they don't give me a picture, okay. At least I get a callback and I don't just get an error. So sending a number to the phone, for example, is as simple as this. Moz activity, name dial, the data is the number that you want to dial, and then you're there. And that's basically it. It goes directly from the phone with the Moz activity into the dialer, and the end user then presses the receiver to send the number. You don't do the automatic dialing for them. They're still the ones in control that dial for you later on. but it's still simple to do a call out from your app. Getting the image from a phone is the same thing. It's a Moz activity saying pick, and you define the type of attributes that you want to have. So an image JPEG, image PNG, and once you've done that, it automatically realizes this is where the pictures come from, and this is the camera that you want to access. If I want to have, for example, a sound file, sound wave, it would give me a recorder app. Or if I access if I want to have an address, then actually it gives me the contacts app. So the things that are already on the phone are available for you as a developer. Once you got this thing back, there's a success handler, which allows you to get a file blob to go into the create object URL and have this image in there. So it's a blob file that you can actually do anything with. You can loop over it, you can convert it, all the things you can do in the wonderful world that we have in browsers right now. So if you want to have some of that, and I hope that some of you are actually thinking like, hey, HTML5 sounds interesting again, because we got all the same functionality that you have in native, and you got the opportunity to convert it to native if you want to. If I write an iOS app, I wrote an iOS app. If I write an HTML5 app, I can use PhoneGap to turn it into iOS, to turn it into Android, to put it on Internet Explorer if I wanted to. It's working everywhere to a degree, and that's the good thing about that. So the first start to do is go to the Developer Hub, which is at Mozilla Marketplace/developer, and that one gives you a step-by-step introduction of what developing for Firefox OS is. There's design guidelines. We don't have any SDK that you have to deal with. We don't have any patents on our interface elements, so that's good. And we have a few apps there as well that you can start with that actually show you how to build one. They're on GitHub as well, and you can change those and walk around. You also learn how to publish your apps, like where to get them into the market. There's a validator for the manifest files. In case you made a mistake, it tells you immediately what's going on there. And you can see the community as well. There's mailing lists, there's IRC channels, there's people available for you to ask what's going on. A lot of people ask me when they come from native development, so how do I do that developing for it? Where's the SDK? Where's the 6 GB of IDE that I download and install because my hard drive is too empty? The web doesn't work that way. And you can use your IDEs, but you also can use VI. I use TextMate for all my development, well actually Sublime Text by now. And in the browser, we got these wonderful tools by now that allow you to actually build things in the browser itself. You can resize the tool in the browser and see the size of it developing directly. So you don't have to do anything like that. If I go, for example, to this site here and I go to the tools and do the web developer responsive design toolbar, I can see the page at 320 and 480 without having to resize the browser. I still got all my tools in there. I can also rotate it and see what it would look like on the phone like that. I can right-click any of the elements and inspect the element then, and have all the developer tools directly in the browser. So the system where people consume our apps are already ones where we built them in. And that's incredibly powerful because I have the same experience as my end users. Of course not on the device, but 90% of my app I can actually write inside the browser by now. And it doesn't matter which browser, they all have good developer tools by now, which is very, very cool. Because when I started in '97 as a web developer, there was nothing there. There was an alert, and that was basically it. But now we have all these really cool inbuilt things that you can play with. There's also a simulator in the browser, which is just an add-on to Firefox that you can download on the add-on site. And then you have Firefox OS directly running in your desktop machine as well, and you can try it out. I can show that as well. If I go to Tools, Web Developer, Firefox OS Simulator, I can start the simulator here, and then I got the Firefox OS running directly in my desktop and with a nice console next to it telling me about all the things that went wrong and all the things that went okay. So I can play with the operating system here, simulate it in my browser. So you see, these are all little things that I built for myself that break when I show them. That happens most of the time. But all the other things like the gallery and the calendar and stuff do work. I might have crashed it. But for development and for testing out a few things, it's actually very, very useful. So this one is available on the add-ons side. There's also a simulator, which actually goes further because it gives you all the APIs, and it's installable through Android Developer Bridge, much like any other simulator as well. But this one actually works for me for most of the things that I've done so far. A really, really good starting point is the Firefox OS boilerplate. Firefox OS boilerplate is an app written by Robert Nyman, and it's actually on GitHub, and you can show it here. And that one is a simple app that has all the different web APIs and web activities already built in. So you can look at the source code and just add your functionality where you need it and remove the buttons that you don't need. It also has a responsive view that actually shows you all the things directly in there. And it's as simple as just looking at the JavaScript and adding your own stuff where you actually need it. Open source with MIT license, and it's a wonderful thing to test out your devices as well once you have them in your hand that everything works. So, talking about devices, they're coming out this year. When is up to our partners. I will not give them business decisions because that's not my right to do. But there's a company called geeksphone.com, which allows you to pre-order phones now. That they get sent from Spain, are going to be about 150 euro, I think. And this is what they look like. And they will run Firefox OS, and you can start playing with real devices with the same hardware specs as the devices that our partners bring out. So that's a very, very simple way to get your hands onto a device. And another thing to remember is that if you got Firefox on Android, all of this stuff is also available on your Android device. So on Mobile World Congress, when I showed my Firefox phone and people like, yeah, but I don't have one, I got my Android out and showed them the same app side by side, which was always annoying because my wallpaper is my girlfriend and she's like, don't bring me on television, but fair enough. And it's just great that I can reuse old Android hardware and put Firefox on it and make it useful again, because the stock browser of Android just needs to die. That to me is the new Internet Explorer 6 that we have to deal with. The browser that came with Honeycomb or with Ice Cream Sandwich that is not Chrome has so many HTML5 bugs it makes me really angry. So this thing has to die. So all in all, it's very funny when you talk to people who do native development and say everything is easy for them. I think the web ride is so not over. I can see native apps dying quicker than the web. The web is there for everybody. We've got billions of people out there yet that you can't reach yet with your native apps. But you can reach them with the web. And if you can reach them with HTML5 applications on a mobile device that is affordable to them, all the better. I think the next year will be incredibly exciting for us, and especially rewarding for me as well, seeing that from the very get-go, I thought Good to Gecko, as it was called back then, was a great idea. And from the get-go, as a web developer, I was always told, like, you can't write code, that's just not coding. And now I can show you that I can send a text message with one line of code, that I can access the vibration API and make two phones fight each other on a table, for example. There's lots and lots of stuff in there that we can do. So that's all I have. So thanks very much. You can join me later to look at the phone itself. You can download all of that for free. The slides are open source. If you want to give a presentation, you can use the slides as well if you wanted to. So thank you very much.